name's Rachel, and today I'm going to talk to you about a book, a bunch of books. This is a book channel, but many of you know probably that I grew up in fundamentalist Christianity, and I have lots of things to unpack and say about it, and I have a whole series on my channel where I do so. But I think I'm going to start doing more like deep dives into particular things that I can somehow relate to books because this is still a book channel. And I was thinking in the car on the way to drop my kid off the other day, I'm like, what can I do that's still book related, but so I can talk about Christian fundamentalism? And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. ABEKA book. So previously ABEKA book was ABEKA book, now it's ABEKA. So ABEKA, if you were fundie, you probably knew or know about ABEKA. If you don't, congratulations, I envy you. So ABEKA is a publisher that creates materials for teaching. I hesitate to call them curriculum because it is propaganda. It is religious, Christian, fundie, evangelical propaganda, and it still affects my knowledge today. Sometimes I have to ask my husband because I went to fundie schools from the age of 5 until the age of 13. So a lot of my education was from ABEKA, and ABEKA has very anti-science, ahistorical things in their books. So I still have to ask my husband from time to time, is that a real thing or is that an ABEKA thing? And we're going to talk about what ABEKA teaches and also how it relates to the United States and our environment in like politics, I guess. I hate to use the word politics. I'm going to relate this all to the January 6th insurrection and QAnon is basically what I'm getting. So ABEKA was created by Arlen and Becca Horton. They graduated from Bob Jones University. Now Bob Jones University, BJU, is another Christian fundamentalist organization school, and it's very similar to Pensacola Christian College, which I'm going to talk about in a second. BJU, ABEKA, and ACE are the three big Christian curriculums that exist that started in the United States. Now I believe they're all international, but if you're a Christian homeschooler, you're likely to use one of those three, or if you go to Christian school, you're likely to use possibly 1 to 3 of them. I did use a little bit of ACE in one of my schools. When I was homeschooled, I used ACE, but the most popular one, and I think the worst of all three, is definitely ABEKA, as far as being pseudoscientific as well as ahistorical, and also just like weird with the McCarthyism of being like anti-communism. It's hilarious. So it was started by Arlen and Becca Horton, these people who graduated from Bob Jones University in 1951. They moved to Pensacola, Florida in 1952 to found a Christian grade school. So the school, Pensacola Christian Grade School, opened in 1954, and it was later renamed Pensacola Christian Academy. So this still exists today. Oh, my baked potatoes died. So this school still exists today, and it is completely segregated by gender. So the stairwells, the elevators, and the parking lot are segregated by gender. You're not allowed to hang out with the opposite gender unless you have a pass. You can't also do other things such as no fornication, no adultery, no homosexual behavior, or any other sexual perversion. I'm so glad I know that they consider me perverse. Pornography, sexual communications including verbal, written, or electronic, no dancing, no profanity, hazing, discrimination, gambling, stealing, no witchcraft, no seances, no astrology or any other satanic practices, no alcohol, no tobacco, no illicit drugs. Policy violations include visiting movie theaters, patronizing unauthorized areas business, being off campus after hours, being in a residence hall belonging to the member of the opposite gender, engaging in social activities with a member of the opposite gender off campus. So yeah, fundie. ABEKA, formerly known as ABEKA Book, is a publisher created by Arlen and Becca Horton that they affiliated with Pensacola Christian College, you know, for tax purposes, but also, you know, so that they could create their own curriculum. They produce K through 12 curriculum materials that were used by Protestant fundamentalist and other conservative evangelical schools, as well as non-fundamentalist Christian schools, and homeschooling families around the world as well. It's named after Rebecca Horton, so ABEKA Book. Very creative. So what we're really here to discuss today is the fact that ABEKA produces materials that do not follow scientific consensus or remain historically accurate according to, you know, actual historians. So they don't follow the scientific consensus of the origin of life, the origin of the universe, vehemently are against the theory of evolution. And actually there was a lawsuit in Association of Christian Schools International versus Roman Stearns. A judge upheld the University of California's rejection of ABEKA publication for preparatory use because the books are inconsistent with the viewpoints and knowledge generally accepted in the scientific community. And of course this was seen as trampling of religious rights by fundies. What do you mean I can't teach things that are pseudoscientific? You're taking away my rights! And a 2017 Huffington Post investigation found that 1/3 of Christian schools participating in private Christian school choice programs used a curriculum either by ABEKA, BJU, or ACE, Accelerated Christian Education, which amounted to, at the time, around 2,400 schools across the United States. So what does ABEKA teach? I would go off the top of my head, but if I do that, I'll just go down and slowly descend into madness of, I can't believe I was taught this, oh my god, I'm having a panic attack. So I made sure to compile notes. I'm going to show you some photos. This is from an ABEKA history book. It says the southern planters bought more land as their crops sold more. The purpose of buying more land was to plant more tobacco and cotton. The southern planter could never hire enough people to get this work done, so he turned to buying slaves. Slaves easily learned how to pick cotton and tobacco. The southern weather was warm and the slaves stayed healthy. In the health books, it's things are said like, alcohol is the most widely abused drug in the world. The average age of a person who starts drinking alcoholic beverages is about 14 years. About 80,000 alcohol-related deaths occur every year in the United States alone. Nearly 1/4 of all suicides are alcohol-related. There are perhaps 18 million alcoholics in the United States. None of this has any sources cited, but this particular branch of fundamentalism is anti-alcohol. My mom wasn't, but the schools that I grew up in were, so that was really confusing for me as a kid because my mom never differentiated between my curriculum and what she believed. From America, Land I Love, the ABEKA book, to help them endure the difficulties of slavery, God gave Christian slaves the ability to combine the African heritage of song with the dignity of Christian praise. Through the Negro spiritual, the slaves developed the patience to wait on the Lord and discover that the truest freedom is from the bondage of sin. So I'm just going to preface real quick by saying that that's not even the worst of it. It does get continuously more racist. These books are bad. They're bad. They're racist. They're real bad. In United States History for Christian Schools, a ABEKA book says, a few slave owners were undeniably cruel. Examples of slaves beaten to death were not common. Neither were they unknown. The majority of slaveholders treated their slaves well. In America, Land I Love, it says, although the slaves faced great difficulties, many found faith in Christ and learned to look to God for strength. By 1860, most slaveholders provided Christian instruction on their plantations. In Old World History and Geography, it says, Africa is a continent with many needs. It is still in need of the gospel. Only about 10% of Africans can read and write. In some areas, the mission schools have been shut down by communists who have taken over the government. By the way, the actual figure of people who could read and write in Africa, which by the way is an entire continent, not just a country, was in 1997 was 57%, not 10%. So that just shows you that ABEKA doesn't know shit about shit. In America, Land I Love, again, it says God used the Trail of Tears to bring many Indians to Christ. They also are anti-global warming. They are anti-Obama. They think Bill Clinton was a socialist. They talk about socialist propaganda. They talk about globalism, which is a conspiracy theory. So they put actual conspiracy theories into textbooks to teach children. From the book The Lessons of History, we can without hesitation present political conservatism as the Christians' proper response to America's glorious heritage because of our biblical perspective. The Christian teacher should teach the scriptural principles upon which America was found and instill within the students the desire and intelligence to remain true to those principles, which establish political and religious freedom for you through Republican self-government and separation of church and state. Stop it. The ABEKA book science program presents the universe as the direct creation of God and refutes the man-made idea of evolution. Further, the books present God as the great designer and law lawgiver. That's from ABEKA Marketing Materials. In Economics, Work and Prosperity in Christian Perspective, it says, some of Milton Friedman's practical ideas include the abolishment of the United States public school system and Social Security program. Many of the crises on the environmentalist agenda are simply not supported by scientific evidence and are promoted by environmentalists for destructive reasons. What are those destructive reasons? Probably Satan. True world peace will only be possible after Jesus Christ comes to rule and reign. So for true world peace, we just need the end of the world. Super. An 8th grade civics text under the heading A Liberal Supreme Court says, the Supreme Court made several liberal decisions in the 1970s, Roe v. Wade, indicating the moral decline of the nation as a whole, which is funny because actually abortion rates went down after Roe v. Wade. So are you saying then that the less abortions, the more moral decline? Okay. They actually say that modern liberalism has many tragic consequences: war, tyranny, and despair for mankind. What liberal war have we been involved in? I am so confused. Describing Roe v. Wade, ignoring 3,500 years of Judeo-Christian civilization, religion, morality, and law, the Burger Court held that an unborn child was not a living person but rather the property of the mother, much like slaves were considered property in the 1857 case of Dred Scott. This is for children. I just want to remind you. A civics text says God's original purpose for government was to punish the evil and reward the good. What? All governments are ordained by God, but none compared to government by God. None compared to theocracy. It actually says none compared to theocracy. What the fuck? In a high school text, so this was beyond my time because I actually went to public high school, under the heading Liberalism in American Life, the most destructive idea to sweep the nation in the 20th century was Charles Darwin's doctrine of evolution. Funny story about evolution, I did not know any of it. So I went to fundie schools from age 5 to age 13. So at 14, I walked into a public high school and I had to wing it because I didn't understand jack shit about earth science because I wasn't taught evolution ever. I was taught to debunk evolution. So I was taught a misunderstood version of evolution in order to debunk it in my Bible class. Yikes. Thanks, ABEKA book. Under the title Socialist Propaganda, perhaps the best known work of propaganda to come from the Depression was John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. Other forms of propaganda include rumors of mortgage foreclosures, mass evictions, hunger riots, and exaggerated statistics representing the number of unemployed and homeless people in America. A commentary on the Vietnam War states that it divided the country into the hawks who supported the fight against communism and doves who were soft on communism. It is no wonder Satan hates the family and has hurled his venom against it in the form of communism. History shows socialism gradually opens the door to communism. This is written by people who don't understand Marx's six-step system. Yeah, like socialism is a stepping stone towards communism. Duh! But they don't even define what communism is, and I guarantee they don't know. Spoiler alert, I agree with communism. A high school's text describing President Bill Clinton's administration says the First Lady announced that she would personally lead the effort to implement a plan of socialized medicine in the United States. Gasp! Oh no! Like we have for the military. An economic text says global warming is a theory that is not supported by scientific evidence. Global environmentalists have said and written enough to leave no doubt that their goal is to destroy the prosperous economies of the world's richest nations. Here it talks about the Ku Klux Klan, saying the Klan in some areas of the country tried to be a means of reform, fighting the decline in morality and using the symbol of the cross to target bootleggers, wife beaters, and immoral movies. In some communities, it achieved a certain respectability as it worked with politicians. Republican politicians though, right? Unlike the modern math theorists who believe that mathematics is a creation of man and thus arbitrary and relative, ABEKA teaches that the laws of mathematics are a creation of God and thus absolute. General MacArthur wisely recognized that the greatest need of the Japanese was to hear the gospel. At his request, Pocket Testament League distributed 10 million Bibles in Japanese. President Truman later sent MacArthur home because MacArthur wanted to pursue the communists into China. Other things that they taught that I remember very vividly, I actually just got into a little little spat with my dad the other day because he still believes in young earth creationism. So they don't teach evolution. Obviously they teach young earth creationism. They teach that the earth is only 6,000 years old, which is something that I had to unlearn in my 20s, which was very frustrating for me. They teach that the Bible is literal and that Adam and Eve are the foreparents of all of humanity. They also teach more harmful things, not just the racism that I brought up, but also like roots of racism. So there is something called the curse of the Canaanites. So the curse of the Canaanites were the descendants of Noah, as in the ark. Noah's son Ham. In the book of Genesis, Ham finds his father passed out drunk and naked. So Noah wakes up and realizes Ham saw him in his uncovered state. He proclaims this curse that will be used to justify African American slavery centuries later. Cursed be Canaan, Noah cries. The lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers. So somewhere in Abrahamic storytelling, Ham became portrayed widely as black. And it was only in 2017 did the Southern Baptist Convention say that they admitted that the roots of white supremacy were in the curse of Ham, and this provided a justification in theology for slavery and segregation, and they finally admitted, like, yeah, that was a thing that happened. Here's how ABEKA's New World History and Geography textbook discusses race. It says, everyone descended from Noah's children and divides people up by 5 colors: yellow, black, brown, red, and white. And so black people, they believe, descended from Noah's cursed son Ham. So like many U.S. evangelicals, I was taught that in this Christian curriculum, basically no black history, and the only black history we were taught was very narrow, and this was done purposely. It's how the perspective that Christianity in a way freed the slaves, which, come on now. And many conservative right-wingers went to similar schools that I went to, and we were essentially taught respectability politics. So we were taught Martin Luther King, good; Malcolm X, bad. Anything to do with Christianity, good; anything to do with black power, bad. Especially Malcolm X was hated because he was Muslim, and they are vehemently anti-Muslim in the fundamentalist Christian community. This only got worse under the Trump administration, this whole teaching kids things that is bullshit, because even Betsy DeVos said she was on a 30-year mission to advance God's kingdom through education, and she pushed to give taxpayer money in the form of vouchers to families so that they could attend these Christian schools that use curriculum like ABEKA. And these books can all be characterized by the skewed version of history and science. And there's this constant teaching that the United States is in this non-stop moral decline, and it's gonna get worse, it's gonna get worse. And they're always telling you, like, it won't get better until Jesus comes back, so just pray that Jesus will come back. So you're living not for the now, but for the hope that Jesus will come and burn everything and bring peace, and it's very damaging. All of this language overlaps with this Christian nationalism, as if, you know, the United States is God ordained, but also in moral decline, and it has these overtones of not just Christian nationalism, but militarism, very pro-military, and obviously racism as well. So it shouldn't come as a shock that the 1776 Project exists. It shouldn't come as a shock that it exists to counter the 1619 Project, and that the 1776 Project is ahistorical and was denounced by historians. It shouldn't be a shock that fundies are constantly saying stuff about separation of church and state, but only when it benefits them. If you want to give separation of church and state to people from them, they're like, well, now we can't proselytize, so that doesn't sound like fun. It shouldn't come as a shock that critical race theory is completely misunderstood and also seen as ahistorical, even though that's not. I have a video on critical race theory, you can go watch it, it's linked down below. They think that critical race theory is ahistorical and racist, but what I just showed you is that ABEKA, the most popular fundamentalist Christian curriculum in most Christian schools and Christian homeschools, is categorically racist and ahistorical. And like, nobody talks about this, even in the homeschool community. I can't find anything. If you search for ABEKA on YouTube, you scroll through, and all there is this. It's all just moms talking about, oh, well, ABEKA worked for us, and it's all homeschool moms. And guarantee you, 9 out of 10 of these women are fundamentalists. And I would say that there's a direct link between the Christian nationalism taught in ABEKA curriculum to these fundy kids who grow up and they don't know any better because they've been going to school learning this same curriculum just pushed and force-fed to them for years and years, and the events of January 6th and the rise of QAnon. Christian nationalists argue that the United States was founded as a Christian nation, meaning that its citizens have to implement a particular version of this country or fall out of favor with God. And that includes, of course, supporting Israel, which free Palestine. That's all I have to say about that. In ABEKA, one of the history textbooks says, although many false philosophies were popular in America before 2000, the new millennium heralded a dramatic acceptance of immoral ideology on a national scale. Three such philosophies are globalism, environmentalism, and postmodernism. Believing religion, particularly Christianity, to be divisive, globalists discourage its influence on public life. It continues. It says these things are divisive, but it's divisive when you have these books teaching ahistorical nonsense, anti-science nonsense, and then you have a president and Betsy DeVos backing up these parents who send their kids to these schools to learn this nonsense. It makes sense why you end up having something like January 6th, where these people believe these collective myths, these collective untruths. And all of it, all this Christian nationalism nonsense really makes sense when you when you consider Donald Trump saying something like, when you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice. Like, what does that even mean? It's really like, the cure for everything is Christian nationalism. Communism bad, evolution not true, kill the socialists, but that's okay because the US military is God ordained. It's like, this is what we're gonna teach kids and y'all are worried about critical race theory? Make it make sense. Another thing that we were taught just before I leave is, I still remember very clearly all of the words to a song I was taught called Behemoth was a dinosaur is he. He lived with humans. So they vehemently pushed the idea that because of young earth creationism, humans and dinosaurs had to coexist, which is not true. And I still remember the song. So like, you want to talk about teaching propaganda to kids, you want to talk about like brainwashing kids. The brainwashing is not happening in public schools with critical race theory. The brainwashing is happening because I still remember all the lyrics to that song about Behemoth living with humans in the book of Job. So that's it. That's all I have to say. If you were an ABEKA kid, leave some comments down below. If you want to support my channel, I have a link to my Ko-fi account down below. Like, subscribe is the best way you can help support me for free. Also, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye!